ahead and introduce our guests today. Our guests are Heidi and Chris Hanks, and they are the founders, co-founders and owners of Little B Speech, which, as I had mentioned before, for some of you, well, some of you came in later, so let me share this with you, is the most successful educational technology for speech pathologists, helping kids who have speech impediments and need to have that development. I actually had vaguely heard about Heidi creating this, and Chris and Heidi working together to grow it. And then I worked in educational technology, and I started talking to people in ed tech, and they were like, oh yeah, Little B. Oh, we use Little B. Oh, that's my favorite program. Oh, this works great with my kids. It was everywhere. So it's a real thrill to be able to have them here. Our very own Rebecca Palmer will be interviewing them for this podcast interview. And we'll open the time up for some questions, so you can ask questions about their experience as well. And I've been told we can cover anything, any topic you want, except for dollars. So did I get that right? Okay, that's top secret. Okay, with that, I'd like to welcome them and give them a hand. Thanks.
Here's water bottles for you
guys.
Thank
you.
All right.
So thank
swivel.
you.
Nice.
Thank you so much for joining us. We were inspired by your story, and it's great to have you here. Let's just get started right off. Tell us a little bit about yourselves and a little bit about Little B Speech.
Well, thank you, Darren, first of all, for that introduction. That's very nice.
Yes,
it's fun to be here today, to have the opportunity to talk to you guys. My name is Heidi Hanks, and my husband is Chris. I'll let him introduce himself in a minute. I went to Utah State University and
Go Aggies!
That's right, and studied speech-language pathology. When I got out of school, my first job was working in early intervention. I worked there for a little while. We had our first son, and I decided I didn't have time to work full-time anymore. And so I did what anyone would do. I started my own private practice and started seeing clients on the side out of our home. And the name of my private practice was Little B Speech. And so that's kind of where Little B Speech originated. And Chris, why don't you tell them what you do?
So my background is in graphic design, and when Heidi and I moved, I also went to Utah State. We got married. We were dating up there, but got married when we came back down to Utah County. And so I studied graphic design. I actually started out in print work, doing magazines, brochures, and was able to get a job also to kind of switch things up to go more into multimedia. And I found a job at an awesome multimedia company in Orem. Worked there for a number of years. And that's me in a nutshell, really, as far as work goes.
And when I started my private practice, I would often lean on Chris and take advantage of his skills and have him help me create my own therapy materials because therapy materials were so expensive and we were so poor. But I never dreamed that we would actually work together. And so it's been a neat experience as we created Little B Speech.
Oh, thank you so much. So tell us a little bit about what happened that turned Little B Speech from a private practice into an app development company.
Well, it was 2010.
Mm-hmm. Yep, 2010.
In 2010, really quickly, a little bit of background about Chris and I. And I think it's kind of interesting, is that Chris and I, as far as finances go, we hadn't had a lot of experience or education on how to manage our own personal finances. So we heard about Dave Ramsey, and together we made a goal to become debt-free. And so before 2010, we'd worked really hard together and become debt-free, and we'd already had that experience of working together on a goal. And I think that was really powerful for us. And then in 2010, after we had become debt-free, we decided to celebrate like everybody else and go to Disneyland with our children.
It was UEA in March.
That's right. And so we scheduled a trip to Disneyland, and Chris bought an iPod Touch to keep our kids entertained. So I was in therapy one day, and when I came out of therapy, Chris said to me, hey, check out this, our new iPod Touch. He'd just been downloading some apps on it. And the very first time, that was the first time I'd ever seen a touch device, and I held it in my hands, and immediately I knew that this would be so powerful to help the kids that I'd been serving in therapy. Especially, I had an autistic client at the time that I had to practically stand on my head to get her attention and to get her to maintain. And every week I was just working so hard to try to get her to attend. And I saw that and I thought, we've got to do something with this. We've got to find a way to get my therapy materials onto that device. And so we spent our entire drive to Disneyland and back talking about nothing else except for how we were going to put these therapy materials onto a touch device.
So this was in March, and I believe in 2010, and the iPad was scheduled to be released the next month in April. And so we started talking about, it started with the iPod Touch, but then we realized, well, if this bigger device, which we have not played with yet, comes out, how much cooler will that be, and how much better these kids, a lot of them don't have fine motor skills, so the bigger screen area and surface area would really be more helpful. So I did some research, and we, after our initial talk, you know, all weekend while we were in Disneyland, standing in the rides with the kids, we were talking about this, and it just started kind of, the idea was just kind of consuming us, and we thought, okay, well, we have to make this happen. So I did a little digging, and we just, when we got back, I started designing to the screen sizes of what I could find online, what they said the iPad would be. So I figured that out, and we just started doing prototypes, just designs. We just started with the design.
Yep, we had designs before we'd ever had an iPad in our hands.
Wow, so it seems like the timing was really fortuitous. It really came together all at the right time. But you also had to take a big leap of faith, kind of. You didn't even have the device. You didn't know if it would work.
Yep.
How did you fit all this around your regular job and continuing your practice?
Well, that idea, when we came upon it, completely consumed us. We really couldn't think of anything else. And so, you know, Chris still worked during the day. I still did my private practice. But at night and on the weekends, we spent all of our time developing this product. I actually ended up becoming pregnant that year with my 4th baby, and we, I mean, we worked constantly. I ended up in the hospital many times with that pregnancy, and I had my laptop in the hospital with me. I was still working. So we were very driven.
She was really driven. I was halfway driven. But when I saw how much work she was doing, I thought, I better not only support my wife. Yes. But I remember coming home from work and from the day job just being exhausted, and then we, you know, feed the kids, we'd put them to bed, and then the second job would begin, and then we'd be up till like 3 in the morning, you know, talking things through and working through these prototype ideas, you know, and so it was exhausting for a year and a half.
We didn't go anywhere or do anything fun. Nothing. After that, Disneyland was it until this came out.
But the kids were young enough. I don't think that they felt like they were missing out. So.
Yeah, well, I'm sure it's good for kids to see parents, you know, actively engaged in something that turned into such a big deal. But, you know, let's talk about that next thing. So talk about getting it listed on the App Store and what happened with that very first release.
Well, I think there were a lot of speed bumps along the way. We worked our tail off. It took us about a year and a half. So I think we worked for an entire year on it, just the two of us, before we'd even talk to a developer. And so by the time we talked to a developer, we had everything completely designed and laid out. And when we went and talked to developers the first time, we started shopping developers. And they were, I think, very surprised, because they said usually people come to them with an idea on a napkin and say, what can you do with this? And so I think that they were all really excited to work with us because they could see the potential in it. I mean, everything, and how driven and focused we were. So we were able to find we were able to really choose the developers we wanted to work with. And they were amazing too. They worked really hard and helped us. We had a goal we were trying to meet to make it for November 2000 for a speech and language conference.
2011.
In 2011, and so we had to push really hard, and it was interesting because it got denied, the App Store denied it 3 times leading up right before the conference, like even the night before. And we were or a couple nights before, we were driving to the conference and I was in tears. I'm like, I'm going to go talk to speech pathologists and I don't even have anything to sell them.
Well, and it's kind of hard too. And just, I mean, we kind of looked at it from an emotional standpoint.
Yeah,
at that time, you think, okay, I've put 1.5 years of my life into this, and these people are just rejecting it for some, what we thought, dumb reason. And I'm sure that there are other developers in the room here. If anyone has not had an app rejected, then good job. Because ours get rejected all the time.
Yep.
But we learned that early on, and we kind of just went through it. We made the changes that Apple was suggesting we make, and the first day of our conference in San Diego, we had a little booth with a little sign, and we were like this little fish in this giant pond, all these big companies, and we're just like, what are we doing here? You know, but we felt like that was the place where we needed to be, and everybody that we talked to came away from our booth so excited, and they could just see, like, I felt like having the experience of you come out and say, this would be so awesome with my kids. I was seeing that same thing with all of these other therapists as they left our booth, our little tiny booth, and we didn't even have it in the App Store. They're like, well, where do I buy it? Because they were ready to buy it, and we're like, well, it's not ready yet, you know?
Yep.
And so that was a really hard day. And it was, I don't know, it took a lot of faith to get through that day for me.
But it was approved and available the second day of our conference. So that was a huge accomplishment. The other thing that was really cool was the night before our conference started, we got an email from Apple.
It was actually the night of, after that first day.
After the
that
first day?
night,
Okay,
yeah.
Before it got approved.
Yeah.
We got an email from Apple saying that they really liked our app and they may like to feature it, and could we please send them some artwork. And we were really lucky because Chris had actually brought his big giant computer down at the time. We were using it as a display at our booth.
So I had a 27-inch iMac that I was just lugging.
So he lugged it back to the hotel and was quickly designing, making designs for the App Store to feature us.
What a day, from like the heartbreak of going to a conference and nothing to show to being a featured app on Apple. And so was it the next day that your app was featured?
Well, the next day it went live. I don't think it was featured for a few weeks.
Yeah, it was probably a couple weeks after that.
But then it was featured for a couple months, maybe?
Yeah, and it was at the #1 downloaded. It was a free app. Our first initial one was free, and it had in-app purchases, so you could purchase different sounds that you want the child to work on, but we gave a sound away for free and all the content within that sound. So we were getting a lot of downloads, and with Apple, when they featured it, it was crazy because it wasn't even a major banner, it was a smaller banner, but people were just downloading it like crazy. So, and we didn't see sales immediately from that either. It took a little bit, but sales started to kind of trickle in, and it did make a difference. So it was definitely a good thing.
So talk a little bit about the freemium model. I know you guys have done this with some of your other apps, had some experience of offering a free download in order to get people to purchase, like in your case, sounds, or other apps do it differently. Is that something you recommend to other entrepreneurs, other app development companies?
Absolutely. We've actually done it both ways. We started with Articulation Station and we offered a free app first. Later we did offer a professional version. So if any of you are familiar with the volume purchase program, you cannot have a free app in the volume purchase program. So that was also very important for us to offer a professional version so that we could take advantage of all the schools who download multiple copies. But that free app was so important because people are able to download and try it. We found that people are less likely to download to take a chance on an expensive app. And our app is $60 in the App Store, the professional version. So that's a lot for an app, especially when people are used to 99 cents and free. So the freemium model has really helped because they download it and they can see how valuable it is, and then they can download different parts, whatever they need. So that's helped a lot.
I think it helps. I mean, every app is going to be different. So it is hard, like you said, to take a chance on an app that's not 99 cents, you know, a $60 app. I mean, it's a professional tool that therapists use. And so being able to offer that to them for free and give them kind of a peek into what the app can do was a huge step in the right direction as for our app, for our business. So it made sense for us, definitely, to do it that way.
The other great thing about it was it's created a way for parents and speech pathologists to work together, because the speech pathologist will often have the professional version and the parent can go home and download the free version and download only the sound that they need. And so we found that that has been a very successful thing for us, because either the speech pathologists are selling it to their parents, or the parents will find out about it and go sell it to their speech pathologist. So it's gone both ways.
Fantastic. So, you know, tell us, it was kind of all of the little wins you had at the beginning, and kind of the strategy about, you know, a professional one for the professionals, and then a model where you can just download sounds for the families. Was that something you kind of planned out, or you just kind of happened and you went in that direction with what was working?
We didn't even think of having a professional model in the beginning. We started with the free model. That just seemed like the way to go, and it ended up being very successful for us. Like we've mentioned, we've actually done that in the reverse order and come out with a professional model for other apps that we've done before the free version, and that's been less successful to start with the professional model. So
we've made a lot of mistakes. We are not, Heidi and I went into this not being business-minded people. When I was studying at Utah State, I'd meet people and I'd have friends that were getting their business degrees, and I always thought, well, I'm in the art department. I think that's pretty cool. You know, I like being in the art department better. And I see that a lot differently now. I wish I would have had a little bit more business background going into this, because we didn't really set out thinking, well, let's make a business out of this. At least I don't think we thought that far down the road. We just thought, this is going to be an awesome tool for people, and if we can make our money back from it, from developing it, then let's do that, and let's do all we can to do that. Well, it exceeded our expectations, and I needed to make a decision at that time. We needed to make a decision whether I stay at my job or make this our full-time job. And deciding to make this our full-time job was a good idea. I just wish going into that we would have had more business knowledge, because we've made a lot of mistakes along the way. And I think we've grown, and over the years we've gotten smarter on how to run our business, but we're still making mistakes, you know, with different things, like with pricing sometimes, or marketing. You know, those are two of the things that have always been some of our struggles, I think. But, you know, it's been a rocky road, but we've enjoyed it. I don't know if that...
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing your experience with us. I think everybody runs into problems and hurdles. And, you know, you guys are a great example of having overcome those. You know, one of the potential hurdles that any business has is competition. Tell me about how you guys deal with competition, especially for a product like an app, where there's, you know, hundreds of apps.
That's a good question. First of all, know your competition. So when we were developing Articulation Station in the beginning, there weren't very many apps out there and doing the same thing, but there were a few.
There were like 2 or 3 maybe.
Yeah. So that made it a little easier. We had fewer to look at. But it was easy for us to look at that and know that we could do it better. So what we always say is that we just have to do it better. And one thing that we have noticed along the way is our competition will copy us a lot. They try to copy different things that we do. But one thing is they never seem to do it as well. And we just continue to innovate and keep making ours better. And I feel like if you stay ahead and if you're passionate about what you do, I feel like that makes a difference. If you spend all your time trying to copy someone else, I think it's always going to look like that. Yeah. But if you're creating and actually really working hard to make something that's going to make a difference, and giving it your best, then I think that comes through.
I think one thing when we were first developing Articulation Station, which was that first app, we downloaded the other ones to kind of see what they were doing. We tried to do our research there, and I noticed that they were really difficult. Some of them were really difficult to use. I felt like there were a lot of screens that we'd go into, and you'd get stuck. There's no exit. And the usability was broken. And so usability is a really big factor for us. We try to spend extra time designing, our UX so that it's easy, that people can navigate. Because we have therapists that are, there's some older therapists that use our apps, that are probably, I don't know what older is. I don't want to offend anybody. Like there's probably some 70-year-old therapists out there, 75, older than the graduate school 20-somethings, and who haven't grown up with technology. And they turn on this iPad, and it's got to be easy for them to use. It's got to be easy for them to work with their kids, because it's a tool. We don't want the tool to get in their way. We want it to be a stepping stone for them, not a stumbling block. And so if we can just have the software get out of their way and just have it be a smooth experience, that's really what we strive for. And that takes a lot of extra time. And I think that's why it took us so long initially, because we thought through every little interaction. Okay, if I tap this, where does this go? And can I get back? And how does that look? What's the transition feel like? There's a lot that goes into it. And I noticed with these other apps, you can tell when you download something and it doesn't, they're just trying to get something into the app store. It doesn't feel right, it doesn't work. The user experience is just really, really poor. So we really focus a lot of time on our user experience. And we don't always hit the bullseye, and thank goodness for revisions and updates, because we can just continue to refine that and make it better. So
I had one other thought on that. So in addition to the user experience, I found that a lot of our competition and a lot of the language that they used and the way they laid things out, they were really speaking to speech pathologists. And when we created ours, we tried to speak to both parents and speech pathologists to make sure that this would be easy enough for a parent to pick up and understand. We included tips in there for parents so that they would know how to use it. And it stemmed from, I started a blog in 2007 called Mommy Speech Therapy that teaches parents how to help their kids at home. And so I think that also helped. And we do that with all of our tools, because if you speak too far above anybody, then other people, the majority of us aren't going to use it or find it useful.
We were lucky that way, I think, because Heidi, talking about our audience and the demographic that we were really trying to target, she is that demographic. She's the speech therapist, she's the mother, and I couldn't speak to both of those, obviously from a parent perspective, but not a speech therapist. So knowing the demographic was really important for us. I think that's important for any product.
Thank you. So I want to also talk about, the first app, the rollout went really well. It sounds like, some hiccups, but mostly a big success. You were featured on the App Store. Then tell us what happened with your second and third app releases.
Well, that's a very good question.
Do you have like a soundbite of a sliding that we could play right now?
Our second
that would be
app
appropriate.
was an app called Articulation Test Center, and it was created to help speech pathologists identify which sounds kids needed to work on. And while it's an amazing tool and something we're very proud of, and the speech pathologists that use it love it, we shrunk our demographic immediately. So rather than just selling to parents and speech pathologists, all of a sudden we went just to speech pathologists. So that was a huge thing. The other thing was a lot of times, parent or speech pathologists have to buy their own therapy materials, but the school districts or the hospitals will provide the tests for them. So now we're competing with a product that is already being provided for them, that they don't have to pay for. So that was.
Yeah, so that second one was.
So it was hard, and so we realized, wow, we shrunk our demographic a lot.
We spent more money developing that one.
Yeah.
And considerable more money developing that. And it's been a successful app in its own right. Just when you compare it to the first one, it hasn't done as well as the first one. But it's been good, and it's a great tool.
And you mentioned our third app. Our third app is an app to help kids that speak Spanish learn to speak more clearly. And I don't think we did enough research before we started working on the app. All we did was get on the internet and see that Spanish was the second most widely spoken language. And
and the trade shows, we'll do trade shows once or twice a year, and depending on the areas that we go, like in Florida or Southern California, we have a lot of bilingual therapists come up to us requesting a Spanish version, and we thought, well, there's got to be a market here. Every time we go to these areas, there's so many Spanish speakers
and I think
wanting
sometimes, like those one or two people that will ask you for something, you need to be careful not to get hung up and think, oh, there's a major need here, we need to do that. And there was more than one or two, but we were starting to hear that we needed to do Spanish, and so we did Spanish, and I think it's been successful among the bilingual speech-language pathologists in the United States of America. But so we shrunk our market even more, because what I found since then is that speech pathology is in its infancy in most of the other Spanish-speaking countries. That's number one. Number two, we developed it for Apple only, and we've learned since then that Android is the predominant device in all of these other countries. And also, they are economically more depressed, so they don't have the money to spend on tools. And I think they're more concerned, in a lot of times, about just feeding their family rather than improving speech. And so that has been, that was an education for us as well. But one quick comment about not just listening to that first comment. In our last app that we just released, we went to a conference, and all the speech pathologists were so excited about it. It's an app it's a stories app. And one of the speech pathologists said, "This is so amazing. Now if you'd only do it in Arabic." No. And Chris and I looked at each other like,
yep, that's going to happen.
That's not happening. I think we've learned from Spanish, Arabic is not likely happening.
So I think one of my last questions before we open it up to the audience, tell us what it's like to be co-founders and parents and a married couple. That from the outside looking in, that seems like it could be very difficult.
Oh, it's pure bliss all the time. It's great.
No, honestly, I feel like as far as being co-founders with Chris, I feel like it's brought us closer together, because it's been really cool to be able to create something together. And now that Chris, he works from home too, so we're working together. We're together 24/7. And the neat thing is nobody else understands everything that we go through like we do. Do you know what I mean? We can talk about, he understands everything that I go through and everything that I feel or am experiencing, and so that's been really neat.
But it can also be problematic, because when you're lying down at bed at night and you're tired, and your husband or your wife leans over, "I really don't think we should have sent that email out today. We should have waited. And let's do, what about this price?" And then all of a sudden it's midnight and we've been talking for an hour because we can't sometimes turn off the spigot. That's something we still work on.
And sometimes we have to set boundaries and say, you know what? We're no talking about business tonight. So.
Yeah, when the kids come home and we I'll work for a couple more hours, and then we try to have that separation. So.
Well, that family is kind of, we were talking earlier, seems like that's kind of what keeps you strong, keeps you motivated, is, working with your own kids and, wanting to keep helping kids with their speech. Is that right?
Oh, yes, absolutely. It's hard for me sometimes to turn off the speech pathology side of me. In fact, any of you I know a few of you out there that are friends with my kids, sometimes their friends come over and I do speech therapy with them. Once in a while I get out my apps and test my apps with them.
Market research.
I'll say, let's play speech therapy. That happens sometimes.
You'll be good lately, though. If somebody really needs it, you'll talk to the mom or dad first.
I've been trying to do that more, but be a little better about
But sometimes, if you've got a kid who's going to be using your app, you need to let them use it and just see how they interact with it. See what happens and just kind of take notes, and because you want it to be usable.
The kids, though, are great. They're great support to us, and they give us a lot of feedback about our apps and whether they're good or not good, which is helpful. And they let us test them on them a lot, so that's nice.
Oh, that's perfect. Well, thank you so much. I think it's time for audience questions. Do we have any?
So your Spanish app was for teaching children to speak Spanish, is that correct?
Yes.
So have you done anything or looked into the area of ESL, of helping people change languages and doing pronunciation with that?
That's a very good question. Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. Probably not enough. We do have, with our English version, we have a lot of speech pathologists that use it for accent reduction. And so I think that we could do more of that with Spanish. But sometimes being a small team, and you should know there's there's 3 main people on our team, Chris and I, and we have a full-time developer, and then we contract out all the rest of our work. So there's 3 main people, and so when we were developing Spanish, we were also developing our Stories app kind of along at the same time. So when we released it and it didn't fly off the shelves like we hoped it would, we were also kind of focused on our Stories app, so I don't think we've done enough. We'll probably do more.
In a lot of, like, you were talking about in traditional app development, start with something smaller and then kind of iterate from there. Do you think the outcome for you guys would have been about the same or better or worse if you would have taken that approach versus put all the thought and effort into it up front?
You know, that's a good question. Are you a developer?
No, I'm an analyst.
I asked you if you're a developer because all the time we hear from developers saying, well, maybe we could just, do let's just do this and release it and then do another one and then release it. Chris and I kind of feel like we want to put our best foot forward. When we release an app, we want to be proud of it and we want to make sure that it goes out there and people know that it's a good product. And I feel like we've set a standard with our brand. People that use our products get so excited when we release something else because they say, I love all of your products, and they know it's going to be amazing. Do we continue? Are there things that sometimes it gets released that didn't get in there? Yes. We have to have those conversations daily.
And those are hard. Those are always tough conversations because when you spend so much time working on something, you think, okay, well, we always tease that we've got 4 kids that actually eat food and then 4 kids that don't, because our apps we consider like our kids almost because we put so much time into them on their side. And when you're forced to like take features away that you feel are really important, because we're trying to make a deadline, that's a really hard conversation to have. And we have those and they're never comfortable. It feels like you're like taking an arm off him and then sending him to the school bus, with one arm. That's how I view it, and I probably shouldn't. Which is why we have an amazing developer, and so he comes from a very reasonable perspective, and he doesn't have the emotion in it that we have, and so he's been a really good addition to our team because he'll kind of level us out a little bit and say, well, he thinks more analytically, I guess, than we do. So
yes, sometimes we want it to be perfect before we release it.
And we've learned that it never is, no matter what. So.
Thank you, sir.
Over here. So you talked about how you didn't do the right things in figuring out what to do in extending your product line and feature choices and so on. Can you talk to us a little bit about the voices that you listen to, where you go, and kind of how you build on your roadmap?
Thank you. Well, I feel like after following Articulation Test Center and Articulation Spanish, and like I said, those are amazing products. We're very, very proud of them. And I still think that if we did a little bit more marketing, they could be even more successful. But what we do try to think about now is not narrowing our market down, number one. So the app that we just barely came out with is called Little Stories. And when we started down the road of creating Little Stories, we were writing, our goal was to write sound-saturated stories to help kids with speech sound disorders. But as we were creating that, I thought to myself, we can't put out another product that is so niche. We need to open up the market a little bit. So we thought about it for a long time, and in the end, we made that app so that every story is exactly 100 words. They are also sound-saturated stories, but we have built into the app that you can measure reading fluency and reading accuracy And you can actually mark all the words that you miss as far as reading errors, speech errors, or language errors. It creates flashcards for them in the end. And so really now we're going after the teacher, parent, and speech pathology market. So we've opened it up a lot more, and so that's kind of the idea, with still including all the same great features we put in our other apps with great data tracking and beautiful user experience and all of those things.
So is that available to the public yet, or is it down the road?
It is, and like we said, we were doing things backwards. We released the professional version first. So we are working on our free version, and we hope to have that released in the next couple of weeks.
Oh, exciting. We'll keep an eye out.
Yeah.
Thank you. Do you have more questions?
Okay, we've got 2 more, and then we'll end on those.
Okay.
Just real quick, you mentioned you guys have the contract everything out. What was the best thing about that, and the worst thing about contracting out everything else for you guys?
So the question was about what's the costs and benefits of contracting everything out as far as development.
That's a good question.
Sorry, not development, but just as running your company.
Okay.
Okay.
The company's small. What's the best thing you've noticed in contracting everything out, and also the hardest thing you've noticed in trying to do it that way?
Well, it's interesting because the nicest thing about contracting things out is when you work with a contractor that you're not very happy with, it's a lot easier to cut ties with them. And we also feel like it's a good way to test people. I guess try people out.
With our current developer, we contracted with him for about 5 months, 6 months, and then offered him a full-time position, and we were lucky enough that he accepted that. So
yeah,
we like to look at it as a trial period. If they really work out and we can afford to bring them on, then that's what we do.
So because there's definitely been, we've had good experiences and a lot better experiences.
But one of the things that can be a struggle sometimes too with contractors is there's ramp up time included in that, right? They're not in the business. They don't understand. You can't just throw all your lingo and jargon at them that you use in the office and have them understand that. So it's sometimes hard for me, I should say, to have patience and kind of bring them up to speed. And that's always been, I don't know if it's been hard for you, that's one of the harder things for me, giving them time to kind of understand our business model and kind of what we're trying to do. But
from a business perspective, it costs a lot less to have a contractor because you don't have to pay all the payroll taxes on a contractor, which is nice. So.
Thank you.
All right, actually, he asked a very similar question that I had, so I apologize. This is going to be an impromptu question. So now that you've developed a good handful of apps and you've got a good stable system, what's your master plan? Do you have, what are your higher goals that you plan to do? Obviously not Arabic, but are there any
off
other...
the table for now.
Well, I actually speak Arabic, and actually it would be very interesting to see that. But
we didn't mean to offend you. Arabic's great.
I'm not offended. Trust me, it is very difficult to learn. So I would not want to put you through that process of how to linguistically make that work. But what do you hope to do now that you've got a system that works, you've got a program that you work well with? Is this something that you plan to grow your team, to grow more apps other than something that, I guess, more things that deal with little b speech?
That's a very good question. I think the number one driving thing for us that keeps us going is the knowledge that there are needs in the community. And that's kind of what happened, what drove Articulation Station from the beginning, was that I knew that it was needed. And there are still some needs that I see that need to be fulfilled and some dreams that I have, app dreams, I should say, that I want to see developed. And until we've developed all of those, I don't think that we'll be able to quit. So that's number one. As far as growing our company?
Well, we would love to eventually take on another programmer. another designer. Right now, and these are things that we still are talking through. Marketing person, somebody to handle all of our customer responses. Right now, all of those things are me. And so the first couple hours of my day is handling the business side, and then I can go on to the, working with the developer and designing and doing that. So I think that we'd be able to take bigger leaps forward if we had a bigger team, which I think to start with, another designer, another developer, and another marketing person, that would be amazing. So.
Just to give you some background though, I feel like Chris and I have probably grown a little bit slower than maybe most startups because we've taken a different approach. I mentioned in the beginning getting out of debt, and that's been a huge theme for us. We've run our entire business debt-free. We've never taken on any investing dollars or whatever. And so that's been really awesome because by the time we've released every single app, it's been 100% paid for. And so that has taken some anxiety out of it. Of course, we want to see it be successful, but that's one nice thing, that's the way we've approached our business.
Yeah, and there's sacrifices with that method too. We've had to have patience. We've worked slower than typical. We see you asked about competition. There's other competitors in the space of the education speech therapy that when we all started, we had one app, they maybe had 3 or 4. Now they've got 60, right? And we don't.
But to be fair, they don't have the same.
Well,
they're not as extensive as ours are.
We look at it as quantity versus quality too.
Right.
So, but yeah, anyway, just an observation there. So.
Well, thank you so much for coming out to speak to us. Let's give them a round of applause. I am super excited.
Thanks, you guys. Appreciate it. Thanks, Dan.
We're so glad that you guys came to join us, and thanks for sharing your great experience and your skills. If you pay attention to the businesses here in Utah, you notice there's a whole movement around the lean business, right? Wes and Dan back here are great examples of that. They've done that for the past 5 years, 5.5 now. There are others who do the same model where they just contract things out of their house, and they keep their teams really small, but they've built amazing businesses, and this is another great example of doing that. Hopefully you've seen some good lessons here. I sure have, and we're really grateful you both came to do this. Could I ask if you two would be willing to draw our raffle winners, one each? Yeah. Okay. Of course. Thank you, Rebecca. Okay.
All
right, McCall, come on up. Yay. You get an awesome Rev Road water bottle.
Weldon Hill.
Hey, I know that guy.
Weldon.
Okay, there we go. Hey, thank you for a photo. Actually, we'll do the photo right after. All right, we have a gift for you we'd like to share. Thank you, Amy. Do you want to go ahead? All right, go ahead. It's a token of our appreciation and a way for you to forevermore remember Rev Road. And so every time you go somewhere, you'll have some nice goodies inside the bag. Okay?
Thank you.
You bet.
You guys are great.
Thanks.
It's been a pleasure.
Thanks, you guys. So, just to wrap up, thanks everybody for coming. When's the next one? First Thursday of each month, except for April. Okay, so we invite you to come back and check us out for the next one. Anyone who's interested in learning more about Rev Road or doing a tour of the building, you're just going to meet right over here by this door, and we'll give you that tour. All right, hey, thanks everybody. Feel free to leave things we can clean up for you, and you're welcome to stay and mix and mingle and network. There are lots of other fun people to meet if you haven't already talked to everyone here. Thanks, bye-bye.